Welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be talking about AFC West draft grades. Okay, and we're going to start this video off with the Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champions. What do they need going into the draft? They need a right tackle, wide receiver, defensive end. Now, in this draft, they went heavy on the defensive side. They came in to this draft with 10 picks. They end up with 7, so they were making moves. They traded up to get some guys. They lost some draft capital. But you look at who they were able to get. Again, went heavy on defense. They start with defensive end, the last pick of the first round, Felix Uzama. I'm not going to try to say his entire name, but a guy to help bolster that defensive front. They got a guy last year, and Karlaftis coming out of Purdue. This is another solid edge rusher to put there and to having that Spagnuolo defense. And again, to have him as depth. This was a draft that was deep on the offensive and defensive line, and they were able to take advantage of that at the tail end of the first round. In the second round, they end up trading up a little bit to number 55 overall, and they get wide receiver Rashee Rice. And this is a guy that, nobody's going to be Tyreek Hill, but could have a Tyreek Hill-like role. They've kind of, missed that part of their offense since Tyreek Hill left, that explosiveness. This is a guy that really has that kind of potential. He's a very explosive player. They just kind of have to, rough around the edges. There's a second-round wide receiver, and, coming at as SMU, he's going to be rough around the edges. But everybody's so quiet that comes out of Kansas City is real hush-hush about what they teach the wide receivers there. So it's something good if they're trying to keep it quiet. So I think he'll be fine for them in the future. They were able to get the tackle that they needed in the third round. Then they go safety in the fourth, fifth round, defensive end again, sixth round, defensive interior, and then finish it off in the seventh round with a cornerback. So again, they went heavy on defense. That kind of seems to be what a lot of teams are doing. Maybe it's this draft in particular. I know a lot of teams kind of look to do it in this draft. It seems like teams are paying guys on offense and then building the rest of the team, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, through the draft. That is certainly what the Chiefs are doing right now. That's what they've done here in 2023. For me, they get a draft grade of B. Pretty solid draft. Losing draft capital definitely factors into it for me. But I like a lot of the guys that they have. I like, that they went after needs in this draft. And so it was a solid draft. Just losing draft capital kind of bumps it down for me. For me, they get a draft grade of B. Going on to the Chargers here, going into the draft, their team needs or left guard, wide receiver, defensive line, linebacker. They got to get better against the run, right? We've been talking about that for years. And if you look at what they were able to do in this draft, first round, 21 overall, Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, TCU, somebody has a lot of potential to be very good in the NFL, and you're pairing him up with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. That offense with those three could be very dangerous. Obviously, is Austin Eckler going to be there right now? It looks like he probably is. We'll have to see how that situation shakes out. But right now, that offense looks very, very dangerous, adding Quentin Johnston to it. They were able to bolster that defensive front, which they kind of had to do. Khalil Mack was kind of disappointing. Bosa was hurt all last year. So they go and get, I'm not even going to try to say this guy's name, Tulu something, coming out of USC, a defensive end, but a guy that a lot of people think is going to be really good. And from everything I've read in the different draft reports, it seems like that was a solid pick, a good pick, good value for where they got him at 54 overall. Getting a linebacker out of Washington State, a guy that I thought could have been drafted sooner, and Diane Henley. He's a dog. Like, turn on the tape, he's a dog, and he's going to solve a lot of the problems in the run game department for them that they've had for years. I think he is a very, very solid pick, good value for them at 85 overall. They get another wide receiver from TCU in the fourth round, Darius Davis. And then to finish the draft in round 7, they end up with quarterback Max Duggan. Should anything ever happen to Justin Herbert, should they not for some reason be able to figure something out with Justin Herbert to keep him there, then, Max Duggan, I guess, they could try to see if he's a future backup quarterback, good backup option. Obviously, again, against Georgia in the national championship, who has pro-level defenders all over their defense, it was a bad showing for Duggan. So obviously not ready for the big stage, But being there in Los Angeles, good pick, I guess. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but whatever. It's what they thought they needed to do. But overall, I think a really solid draft for what they had. They had 7 picks coming in this draft. They end up with 7 players coming out of this draft. And I like a lot of the players that they got. I think they got a lot of value. And for me, they get an A- grade for the 2023 NFL draft. Now, looking at the Broncos and what they have, obviously didn't have the draft capital that you would want if you were going to be the GM of the Broncos because of the Russell Wilson trade. So they don't have any first round picks in 2023 draft. And what do they need this year? They need right guard, linebacker, cornerback for depth and strong safety. And they go in round 2. Their first pick of the draft was pick 63. And they go wide receiver Marvin Mims coming out of Oklahoma, getting some much needed depth to the wide receiver core, especially there in the AFC West with what the rest of those teams are doing. Had to get depth at wide receiver. They go Marvin Mims coming out of Oklahoma. Solid pick. Nothing crazy, but solid pick. Round 3, but just 4 picks later, the linebacker Drew Saunders. Again, it's a position of need, a solid football player. Nothing crazy. They bolster that secondary, get some of that depth that I mentioned with Riley Moss coming out of Iowa. And a guy that I went way later than I thought he was going to, J.L. Skinner, coming out of Boise State. I think he's a dog. I think he's underrated. I understand why he slipped, and I understand everything that you could say about him. But he's a guy that I think with the right coaching could be really, really good. And I think landing in Denver is an excellent spot for J.L. Skinner. I think in the future, he's going to be a very, very solid piece of that Denver Broncos secondary and what they're building in that secondary. I think he's going to be really good in the future. And then finish it off with Alex Forsyth coming out of Oregon in the 7th round, pick 257 at center. Could be a value pick if he's able to play in the future. He's a guy that has a lot of potential at his position. So overall, they didn't have much in terms of draft capital. They came into the draft with 5 picks, came out with 5 players picked. But what they did with it, I liked. Finding guys for depth positions, finding guys for need. I thought the guys that they got good value on some of these guys. Again, J.L. Skinner being a big part of that. Alex Forsyth is a part of that. So I think they did well. Didn't have a whole lot of draft capital though, which kind of weighs it down a little bit. Would have liked to see them continue to draft the way it was looking. But for me, they get a draft grade of B for 2023. And the last team in the AFC West to talk about here is the Raiders. Their team needs coming in were pretty much, all across the offensive line, cornerback, interior defensive line, and linebacker. And they came into this draft with 12 picks. They leave with 9 players drafted. So they were making moves. They were moving up to get guys that they liked. But they started this draft with the 7th pick. They stayed at 7, where they ended up getting edge rusher Tyree Wilson, who was debated and is debated, could be the best edge rusher in this draft. There's certainly a debate to be had there. But Tyree Wilson's going to be a dog. You add him with Max Crosby. You add him with Chandler Jones. And having him in that rotation and being able to rotate them, you would expect that as the season goes, Chandler Jones probably play a little less. Tyree Wilson probably play a little more. He's a dog. He's going to be very good in the NFL. I really like that draft pick for them. This is a team that has struggled on the defensive side for years, mainly on the pass rush, and to have a guy that can come in and really, I would expect pretty much immediately have an impact on the other side of Max Crosby. I mean, it's going to be so important for what the Raiders are trying to build for the future. And then you're able to replace Darren Waller with Michael Mayer, who's a very solid pick. He's a different kind of athlete. He's not really what you get in Darren Waller, but he's going to be a very solid run blocker, which is what they need. Having Josh Jacobs, you have Jimmy Garoppolo. What they're trying to build and the way Josh McDaniels' offense usually works is kind of more run heavy anyways. So having Michael Mayer is kind of perfect for that offense. And if he develops right, it's a big comparison to say somebody would ever beat Travis Kelce. But from an athletic standpoint, is more of a Travis Kelce type. And so if you can develop him right and you can coach him right and get him to, be football smart like Travis Kelce, get him a quarterback he can get a good rapport with, then in the future, this could end up being a major steal for a guy that everybody thought was going to go at the midpoint of the first round of this draft. Ends up going round 2, pick 35 overall. Another pick that I think is major value is defensive tackle Byron Young coming out of Alabama. This is a guy that I think is going to be very good. Interior defensive linemen don't get a whole lot of shine in the NFL, but it's the kinds of things I pay attention to. I think there's a lot of value in this pick. I think he's going to be very good. Obviously, if you go turn the tape on in the run game, amazing. Like, you're not just going to move this guy. You're going to really have to put your ass into it, and he's going to make you fight for everything you do all 60 minutes of a football game. Brian Young is a dog coming out of Alabama. I think that's a really good pick for that defensive front. You go and get a wide receiver coming out of Cincinnati, Trey Tucker, and then they continue to go heavy with the defense. 4th round, cornerback. 5th round, safety. 6th round, linebacker. 7th round, another interior defensive lineman. So they're going heavy on defense, exactly what they needed to do. I love what they were able to do in this draft. I love who they got. I think not drafting a prominent quarterback like a Will Levis or a Hendon Hooker shows that they kind of want to invest, and they think they can probably end up with Jimmy G for a long-term commitment. That's what that showed me. That's something that we'll talk more about in the future when we talk about the Raiders for the upcoming 2023 season. Don't forget to keep coming back daily for more off-season content, and we'll see you for the next video.